My grandfather's journal had a countdown timer ending this year. The mountains remember, and they're stirring again. I thought he was losing his mind until I found identical warnings from 4 other families, all tracking the same mysterious 50-year cycle. For over a century, something strange has been lighting up the night sky above Brown Mountain in North Carolina. These aren't your typical campfire glows or car headlights bouncing off the ridge. We're talking about mysterious orbs of light that dance, hover, and vanish without explanation. Local folks have been scratching their heads about these luminous visitors since the early 1900s, and honestly, we're no closer to solving the puzzle today. The Cherokee people were the first to notice these weird lights, long before scientists showed up with their fancy equipment. According to their stories, the lights are spirits of warriors who died in a great battle, forever searching the mountainside for their fallen loved ones. Pretty romantic explanation, right? But here's where it gets interesting. These aren't just campfire tales passed down through generations. Scientists have actually captured these lights on camera multiple times. The U.S. Geological Survey investigated them in 1913 and came back scratching their heads. Then the Smithsonian Institution took a crack at it in the 1920s. Even modern researchers with high-tech gear have recorded footage that makes them question everything they know about atmospheric phenomena. The weird part is that some of these lights behave in ways that current science simply cannot explain. Then there's the timing aspect that really throws everyone for a loop. These lights aren't random party crashes. They follow a schedule. September through November seems to be prime time for Brown Mountain's light show, with peak activity happening on clear nights when atmospheric conditions are just right. But why these specific months? Nobody knows for sure, though some locals swear the lights get more active during certain moon phases. The theories scientists have cooked up range from plausible to downright creative. Some suggest the lights come from natural gas escaping from underground deposits and spontaneously igniting. Others point to rare forms of ball lightning or electrical discharges caused by the mountain's unique geological makeup. One particularly bold theory involves piezoelectricity, basically the idea that the mountain's quartz deposits generate electrical charges when subjected to pressure changes. Let's not forget the tourist factor in all this. Brown Mountain has become a magnet for curious visitors, hoping to catch a glimpse of these elusive lights. Local viewing spots get packed with families, paranormal enthusiasts and scientists during peak season. Some people camp out for days without seeing anything, while others claim to witness spectacular displays on their first visit. The lights seem to have their own sense of humor about when to appear. What makes this phenomenon even more baffling is its consistency over time. We're not talking about a few isolated incidents that people exaggerated into legend. These lights have been documented by everyone from Native American tribes to modern-day researchers using infrared cameras and spectrometers. The evidence keeps piling up, but the explanation remains frustratingly out of reach. While Brown Mountain's mysterious lights continue to puzzle experts and delight visitors, they're just one example of how Appalachia operates on cycles that seem to mock our understanding of normal patterns. Speaking of cycles that leave people stunned and confused, the Great Appalachian Storm of 1950 didn't just knock down trees, it redefined what people thought winter could do to them. Snow piled 30 feet deep in some valleys. Winds hit 160 miles per hour, strong enough to pick up cars and toss them like toys. Entire towns vanished under white for weeks, cut off from the outside world completely. But here's the thing about these megastorms. They don't follow normal weather rules. Regular blizzards come from predictable patterns. These monsters, they seem to appear from nowhere, grow impossibly fast, and hit with a fury that leaves meteorologists scratching their heads decades later. Take the storm of 1993, which locals still call the storm of the century. It dumped more snow on Appalachia in 3 days than most places see all winter. The weird part is how it seemed to know exactly where to hit hardest. Mountain communities that had survived 100 years of harsh winters suddenly found themselves dealing with snowdrifts that reached second-story windows. Some folks had to dig tunnels just to get to their barns. Then there's the timing issue that really gets scientists talking. These superstorms hit roughly every 50 years, give or take a decade. It's like the mountains have some kind of internal clock that decides when to unleash hell. The math is too consistent to ignore, but too irregular to predict with any real accuracy. What makes these storms truly terrifying isn't just their size, it's their lasting impact. The 1950 storm knocked down so many ancient trees that lumber companies found work for the next 5 years just clearing fallen timber. Rivers changed course when massive ice dams burst in the spring melt. Entire hillsides eroded away, creating new valleys where none existed before. Local families who lived through multiple megastorms described them as life-changing events. Not just because of the immediate danger, but because of how they reshape everything afterward. Communities that lose their main roads for months develop different relationships with their neighbors. Towns that get completely isolated learn to depend on themselves in ways they never had to before. The unpredictability drives everyone crazy. Modern weather radar can spot regular storms days ahead. These megastorms, sometimes they form so fast that by the time satellites catch them, they're already dumping record-breaking snow. It's like they operate on rules that predate modern meteorology. What's really unsettling is how survivors describe the atmosphere before these storms hit. Many report an unusual stillness, almost like the mountains themselves are holding their breath. Animals behave strangely, dogs won't go outside, birds disappear completely, and livestock huddle together days before the first snowflake falls. The scars these storms leave behind tell stories for generations. You can still see dead tree lines from the 1950 storm marked across certain ridges like giant thumbprints. Some valleys still have boulder fields where ice dams burst and sent house-sized rocks tumbling downstream. Speaking of those massive boulder fields scattered throughout the region, well, those have their own mysterious timeline that connects modern Appalachian weather to forces that shaped these mountains long before any storm had a name. Strange weather patterns are one thing, but what happens when ancient disasters leave calling cards that last for thousands of years? Scattered across Appalachia, you'll find something that stops hikers dead in their tracks. Massive boulder fields filled with rocks the size of pickup trucks, some even larger than houses. These aren't just random stones that rolled down hillsides last Tuesday. Scientists believe these colossal rock gardens are souvenirs from catastrophic floods that happened right after the last ice age ended. We're talking about water events so violent they make today's hurricanes look like garden sprinkler mishaps. The process was brutally simple, yet mind-boggling in scale. Ancient glaciers would melt rapidly during sudden warming periods, creating flash floods that could move boulders weighing several tons like they were beach balls. Then there's the freeze-thaw cycle that really kicked things into high gear. Water would seep into rock cracks, freeze solid, and expand with enough force to split mountains apart. When the ice melted, these newly fractured boulders became ammunition for the next massive flood. The weird part is how organized some of these boulder fields look today, almost like someone arranged them in patterns, which makes zero sense until you understand how floodwater behaves. Some boulder fields cover areas larger than football stadiums and are nearly impossible to walk across without serious rock-hopping skills. Local hiking guides joke that these places are where Mother Nature played the world's most dangerous game of marbles. But every few decades, something remarkable happens that connects these ancient mysteries to modern times. Heavy rains still move these massive stones, just not as dramatically as those prehistoric floods. After particularly intense storm seasons, hikers report finding boulders in completely new positions, revealing hidden caves or exposing sections of creek bed that hadn't seen sunlight in decades. It's like the mountains are still rearranging furniture, just very, very slowly. The connection between modern weather and ancient geology gets even stranger when you consider how these boulder movements can predict where rivers might flow during extreme flooding. Local emergency planners have started paying attention to these shifts, realizing that thousand-year-old rock patterns might hold clues about where the next big flood could cause the most damage. What really bakes your brain is thinking about the sheer power required to create these boulder fields in the first place. The water had to be moving fast enough and deep enough to transport rocks that modern machinery struggles to lift. Some geologists estimate these floods moved at speeds of over 60 miles per hour, while carrying debris loads that would make today's mudslides look polite. Weather patterns that seemed impossible to our ancestors apparently happened regularly during certain climate transitions. The boulder fields prove that Appalachia has experienced natural disasters that dwarf anything in recorded history. But ancient floods and mysterious lights aren't the only things that follow strange cycles in these mountains. Some patterns involve creatures and stories that refuse to stay buried in the past. Deep in Appalachian hollows, something strange happens every few decades. Old stories that seemed dead suddenly spring back to life. Not just whispered around campfires, but backed by fresh sightings from people who swear they saw something impossible. Take Mothman. Back in 1966 and 1967, folks around Point Pleasant, West Virginia couldn't stop talking about a winged creature with glowing red eyes. Newspapers went crazy. Then it disappeared from headlines for years. But here's the weird part. Every 20 to 30 years, new waves of Mothman reports surge through the mountains. Different witnesses, same basic description. Coincidence? Local elders don't think so. They've noticed these legend revivals follow patterns. Sometimes they line up with unusual lunar phases, other times they match severe weather cycles, or even those megastorms we talked about earlier. It's like the mountains themselves wake up old stories when conditions are just right. Then there's the trumpet sounds. Residents across multiple states have reported mysterious brass-like blasts echoing through valleys. No visible source, no logical explanation. These reports cluster in specific years, then vanish for decades. The Cherokee have stories about spirit trumpets that date back centuries, but modern witnesses include skeptical engineers and retired teachers. What makes this really interesting is how the legends evolve. Each new generation of believers adds their own twist. The 1960s Mothman was described as a harbinger of disaster. Modern sightings often paint him as more of a protective figure. Same creature, different interpretation. The stories adapt while keeping their core mystery intact. Ghostly cries present another puzzle. Every 25 years or so, reports flood in about unexplained wailing sounds drifting through mountain passes. Not animal sounds. Residents know those by heart. These are human-like voices calling from empty wilderness. Some witnesses claim the voices speak names of people who died in old mining accidents or logging disasters. Scientists have tried recording these phenomena during peak cycles. They've captured some genuinely puzzling audio. Sounds that don't match known wildlife or atmospheric conditions. Makes you wonder what's really out there, doesn't it? But the most fascinating aspect isn't the sounds or sightings themselves. It's the timing. Local historians have started tracking these legend surges against historical events. Mining disasters, major population shifts, economic crashes, they often coincide with increased supernatural reports. Almost like collective trauma imprints itself on the landscape, waiting for the right moment to surface again. The Cherokee and other indigenous peoples weren't surprised by any of this. Their oral traditions always described the mountains as places where time moves differently, where past events can bleed into the present under certain conditions. Modern residents are just catching up to what native peoples knew all along. Each wave of legend revival brings new believers and fresh skeptics. The debates rage in diners and general stores until the sightings fade again. Then silence returns to the hollows, and everyone waits for the next cycle to begin. Speaking of cycles, the mountains don't just wake up old stories. They also trigger massive biological events that reshape entire ecosystems in ways that seem almost supernatural. When a 17-year cicada outbreak matches up with other rare natural events, the mountains practically explode with life. These insects spend 17 years underground, then emerge all at once like nature's version of a surprise party nobody asked for. The timing gets really weird when their cycles overlap with other biological booms happening on their own mysterious schedules. Picture millions of cicadas covering every tree trunk while rare wildflowers decide this is also their year to bloom in massive numbers. The noise alone can reach 90 decibels, basically a lawnmower running 24/7 for weeks. Birds go absolutely crazy during these supercycles, gorging themselves until they can barely fly. Bears wander closer to towns following the feast. Even the shy creatures come out because there's simply too much food to ignore. Well, the really strange part is how these biological explosions seem to sync up with other mountain mysteries. Some old-timers swear the cicada years bring more unexplained lights and stranger weather patterns. Scientists can't prove any connection, but the timing makes you wonder if nature operates on some master calendar we haven't figured out yet. Then there are the plants that play by their own rules entirely. Certain mountain laurels and rhododendrons will have normal blooms for decades, then suddenly explode into displays so massive they look fake. These mast years don't follow any pattern humans have cracked. One spring, hiking trails that were green and quiet for 20 years become tunnels of overwhelming color and fragrance that attract wildlife from hundreds of miles away. The streams tell their own version of this story. Every few decades, fish migrations that haven't been seen in living memory suddenly return. Native brook trout appear in creeks where locals haven't spotted them since their grandparents were kids. The fish runs get so thick that old-timers joke about being able to walk across the water on their backs. Makes sense, right? All that extra food washing downstream from the insect and plant booms creates a buffet that draws aquatic life back to forgotten waterways. But why do these surges happen when they do? Scientists studying tree ring data found that major biological booms often coincide with specific combinations of rainfall, temperature, and soil conditions that only align every few decades. It's like nature needs all the stars to line up perfectly before throwing these massive parties. Local ecosystems remember these events long after they're over. Soil samples show nutrient spikes that correspond to cicada years from the 1800s. Tree growth rings reveal the years when extra fertilizer from decomposing insects helped forests explode upward. The mountains literally grow differently during supercycle years, creating layers in the landscape that tell the story of these biological explosions decades later. The weirdest part might be how wildlife behavior changes during these surges. Animals that normally avoid humans venture into towns and backyards, following food sources they haven't seen in their lifetimes. It's as if the entire mountain ecosystem temporarily rewrites its rulebook, creating opportunities and interactions that vanish as quickly as they appeared, leaving behind only stories and subtle changes in the forest itself. These natural rhythms connect to something even bigger happening across the region. Money talks in Appalachia, but it speaks in 50-year cycles that nobody sees coming. One decade you're dirt poor, scraping by on whatever the mountains give you. The next, your little coal town transforms into a boom town where everyone's buying new trucks and building bigger houses. The coal rushes hit hardest. First wave rolled through in the early 1900s, turning sleepy hollows into industrial powerhouses overnight. Railroad tracks appeared like magic, carving through valleys that hadn't seen outsiders in generations. Thousands of workers flooded in from everywhere: Polish immigrants, African Americans from the Deep South, Irish families chasing the American dream. These weren't just job changes. Entire cultures collided in mining camps where nobody spoke the same language or ate the same food. Then there's the crash that follows every boom. Always happens. Coal prices tank, mines shut down, and half the population vanishes faster than morning mist. The 1970s energy crisis flipped everything upside down again. Suddenly coal was king, then worthless, then valuable again. Makes sense, right? But here's where it gets weird. These economic waves don't just move money around, they reshape who Appalachian people actually are. When outsiders flood in during boom times, they bring new music, different foods, fresh ideas about everything from religion to raising kids. Local teenagers start talking differently. Old-timers complain about traditions dying, but something interesting happens instead. The culture adapts like a river finding new channels. Bluegrass music. That came from mixing Scottish fiddle tunes with African banjo rhythms during one of these cultural collision periods. Same thing happened with food. Cornbread met Polish sausage, creating dishes you won't find anywhere else on Earth. Let's not forget the highway projects. Interstate construction in the 1960s sliced through communities that had existed for 2 centuries. Some towns got bypassed and nearly died. Others suddenly found themselves on major trucking routes, becoming unexpected pit stops for travelers heading south. One highway decision could make or break an entire county's future. Well, the really fascinating part is how people prepare for these cycles without even realizing it. Families develop survival strategies passed down through generations. Grandmothers teach skills that seem pointless during good times: canning food, fixing everything instead of buying new, keeping multiple income sources running. These habits look old-fashioned until the next downturn hits, and the weird part is how quickly communities can reinvent themselves. A town built around coal mining becomes a tourist destination, featuring authentic Appalachian culture. Former miners become tour guides, showing visitors the very shafts they used to work. Their great-grandfathers would laugh at the irony, getting paid to explain how hard their lives used to be. The pattern never stops. Technology booms, energy transitions, federal programs, global market shifts. They all roll through these mountains like weather systems. Each wave leaves behind new families, abandoned buildings, changed landscapes, and stories that become tomorrow's folklore. Right now we're watching another shift unfold. Green energy, remote work, urban flight, all creating the next 50-year cycle that will reshape Appalachian identity once again. The mountains have seen this dance before, and they'll see it again.